I wasn't always old and scratched. Once I was brand new, my surface smooth and polished, my legs sturdy and unblemished. I remember the day I was brought into the classroom. The smell of fresh paint and varnish clung to me, and the sunlight streaming through the windows made me gleam. I was proud to be here, ready to serve my purpose. The classroom was alive with the sounds of children, laughter, chatter, the occasional scolding from the teacher. I was placed in the second row, right in the middle, where I could see everything. The first student to sit at me was a boy named Tommy. He was small for his age, with a mop of blonde hair and a mischievous grin. Tommy was the kind of kid who couldn't sit still. He'd tap his pencil on my surface, drum his fingers, and wiggle in his seat. But he was also curious, always asking questions and doodling in the margins of his notebook. One day, he carved his initials into my surface with a pocket knife he wasn't supposed to have. At first, I was horrified. My perfect, unblemished surface ruined. But over time, I came to see it differently. Those initials were a part of Tommy, a piece of his story, and now they were a part of me, too. Years passed, and students came and went. Each one left their mark on me, in one way or another. There was Sarah, who loved to read and would spend her free time poring over books at my desk. She'd underline passages in her textbooks and write little notes in the margins. Sometimes she'd forget to erase the pencil marks, and the next student would find them and wonder about the girl who had sat there before. Then there was Jake, who hated school and made no secret of it. He'd slouch in his seat, scowl at the teacher, and scribble angry messages on my surface. But even Jake had his moments. I remember the day he found a stray kitten on his way to school. He smuggled it into the classroom and hid it in my compartment, feeding it bits of his sandwich during lunch. The teacher eventually found out, of course, but instead of punishing him, she helped him find a home for the kitten. I've seen so many students over the years, each one unique, each one leaving a piece of themselves behind. Some were dreamers, like Emily, who would stare out the window and sketch pictures of the clouds. Others were worriers, like Ben, who would chew on his pencil and fidget nervously during tests. And then there were the quiet ones, like Lily, who rarely spoke but always listened, her eyes wide with curiosity. But time doesn't stand still, not even for a school desk. As the years went by, I began to show my age. My surface became scratched and worn, my legs wobbled, and my once shiny finish grew dull. The students didn't seem to mind, though. If anything, they seemed to like me more because of it. I was familiar, comforting, a constant presence in a world that was always changing. One day, a boy named Michael sat at me. He was quiet and shy, with glasses that were always slipping down his nose. Michael loved to draw, just like Emily had. But while Emily sketched clouds and flowers, Michael drew dragons and knights and fantastical worlds. He'd lose himself in his art, his pencil flying across the page as if it had a mind of its own. Michael was different from the other students. He didn't have many friends, and he often seemed lost in his own world. But I could tell that he had a big heart. One day, he found a note carved into my surface. "Math sucks," and instead of adding to it, he erased it and replaced it with a drawing of a dragon. It was a small act, but it meant a lot to me. Michael stayed with me for a few years, and I watched him grow more confident with each passing day. By the time he left, he was no longer the shy, awkward boy I had first met. He was as an artist, ready to take on the world. But not all stories have happy endings. One day, the principal came into the classroom with a clipboard in hand. He looked around, nodding to himself, and then said, "It's time for an upgrade. These old desks have served us well, but it's time for something new." The students cheered, excited about the prospect of shiny new desks with smooth surfaces and no wobbly legs. But I felt a pang of sadness. My time was coming to an end. When the movers came to take me away, I wanted to scream, to tell them that I wasn't just a piece of furniture. I was a part of this classroom, a part of these students' lives. But I couldn't. I was just a desk, after all. They carried me out to the storage room, where I was left among a pile of other old desks and chairs. The room was dark and dusty, and for the first time in decades, I felt truly alone. But then something unexpected happened. A man walked into the storage room, his eyes scanning the pile of old furniture. He was in his late 30s, with messy brown hair and glasses that were slightly too big for his face. He stopped when he saw me, a smile spreading across his face. "Michael," he said softly, running his hand over my surface, "I can't believe you're still here." It was him, the boy who used to draw dragons on me. Except he wasn't a boy anymore, he was a grown man. And from the look of the sketchbook tucked under his arm, he was still an artist. Michael convinced the school to let him take me home. He cleaned me up, sanding down my surface and giving me a fresh coat of varnish. But he didn't erase the carvings or the doodles. He said they were part of my history, part of what made me special. Now, I sit in Michael's studio, surrounded by his artwork. He uses me as his drawing table, just like he did all those years ago. And every time he runs his pencil across my surface, I feel alive again. I may not be in the classroom anymore, but I'm still a part of the story. And as long as I'm here, I'll keep remembering. Michael's studio became my new home, and for a while I thought my journey had reached its final chapter. But life, as I've learned, is full of surprises. Michael wasn't the same boy I remembered from the classroom. He was older now, with lines around his eyes, and a quiet confidence that came from years of experience. But in many ways, he was still the same. He still loved to draw, still lost himself in his art, and still had that spark of creativity that made him special. At first, it was just the two of us. Michael would spend hours at me, sketching and painting, just like he did when he was a boy. But then, one day, a little girl walked into the studio. She had curly brown hair and big, curious eyes, and she was clutching a box of crayons. "Daddy, can I draw too?" she asked, looking up at Michael with a hopeful expression. Michael smiled and pulled up a chair. "Of course, Lily. This desk has plenty of room for both of us." Lily climbed onto the chair and spread her crayons across my surface. She started drawing a rainbow, her tiny hands moving with the same focus and determination I remembered from her father. As I watched her, I felt a warmth I hadn't felt in years. It was as if a new chapter of my life was beginning, one filled with the laughter and creativity of a new generation. Over time, Lily and I became inseparable. She'd spend hours at me, drawing pictures of her family, her friends, and the imaginary worlds she dreamed up. Sometimes Michael would join her, and they'd work side by side, their laughter filling the room. It reminded me of the classroom, of all the students who had sat at me and shared their dreams. But this was different. This was a family, and I was a part of it, a part. As Lily grew older, her drawings became more detailed and imaginative. She started experimenting with watercolors, and soon my surface was covered in splashes of blue, green, and yellow. Michael didn't mind. He said the paint stains were a part of my story, a testament to the creativity I inspired. One day, Lily brought a friend into the studio. His name was Ethan, and he was shy and awkward, with a mop of curly hair and a nervous smile. "This is where I draw," Lily said, gesturing to me. "It's my favorite place in the world." Ethan ran his hand over my surface, his eyes widening as he took in the carvings and doodles. "This desk is amazing," he said. "It's like it has a story to tell." Lily grinned. "It does. My dad says it's a memory keeper. It's been around for decades, and it's seen so many kids grow up." Ethan nodded, his fingers tracing the faint outline of Michael's dragon. "I think I'd like to draw here too," he said. And so Ethan became a regular visitor to the studio. He and Lily would sit at me for hours, sketching and talking about their dreams. Ethan wanted to be an architect, and he'd often draw elaborate buildings and cityscapes. Lily would offer suggestions, adding her own creative flair to his designs. They made a great team, and I could see their friendship growing stronger with each passing day. But life, as I've learned, is full of twists and turns. One day, Michael came into the studio with a sad look on his face. "We're moving," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "The new house doesn't have room for a studio. I'm going to have to put the desk in storage." Lily protested, tears streaming down her face. "You can't! This desk is special. It's part of our family." Michael sighed, his expression pained. "I know, sweetheart, but we don't have a choice." And so, I was moved once again, this time to a storage unit. The room was cold and dark, filled with boxes and forgotten furniture. I felt a deep sense of loss, as if a part of me had been left behind. But I held on to the memories of Michael, Lily, and all the students who had sat at me over the years. They were my light in the darkness, my reason for existing. Months turned into years, and I began to lose hope. Dust settled on my surface, and the silence was deafening. I wondered if I'd ever be used again, if I'd ever feel the weight of a pencil or the warmth of a child's hand. But then, one day, the door to the storage unit creaked open. A young woman stepped inside, her curly brown hair tied back in a ponytail. It was Lily. She was older now, her face more mature, but her eyes still held the same spark of creativity I remembered. She ran her hand over my surface, a smile spreading across her face. "I've missed you," she said softly. "I'm starting my own studio, and I want you to be a part of it." Lily had become an artist, just like her father. She set me up in her new studio, a bright and airy space filled with her artwork. She spent hours at me, sketching and painting just like she did when she was a little girl. And sometimes she'd bring her own students to the studio, sharing her love of art with the next generation. As I sit here, surrounded by the laughter and creativity of Lily and her students, I realize that my story isn't over. It's just beginning. I may be an old desk, but I'm still a part of something bigger. I'm a memory keeper, a witness to the lives and dreams of those who sit at me. And as long as I'm here, I'll keep remembering.